Yes, this is the world we're going to live in. I jump into a meeting, there's three human beings and 15 note takers. Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to let people continue to just sort of wander in, and we'll get things started here shortly. As always, if you have any questions, shout them out. We keep this awfully informal. And our friend Ben from here at SaaS Alerts will not be joining us. He's at a show today, so his charm will be missed. You're stuck with me. Let's see who else is jumping in here. Got a couple more trickling in, so we'll let them arrive. Excellent. And some familiar faces. Welcome, everyone. And we'll let give everybody else just one more minute or so to kind of trickle in. Looks like we're a little light today. I know a lot of people are dealing with the end of quarter issues, and there are a couple of decent sized shows going on that may have other people's attention. So not surprising. Connor or Alex, if you or Maya, if somebody could give me a thumbs up or let me know this audio is coming through okay. I just don't want to be talking to myself. Thank you, dear. Appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and start with some just a couple of nonsense moments here. Anybody who hasn't joined this before, I think Steve's a little bit new. I'm not sure you've seen one of these before. We keep this super informal. If you have any questions, shout them out. This is meant to be much more technical than like the Thursday calls. Um, but again, if you have any questions, let us know. If even if they're not, whoops, people waiting to be let in. You know. Even if they're not exactly technical, we're always happy to discuss them here. Usually I'm joined by Ben Jones from our team. Ben is out right now, so probably our strongest technical guy is not here, so I'm going to fake it until he returns. Um, one thing I did want to sort of talk about, I've got a couple of people who are straggling in. One thing I did want to bring up was something that I thought I found rather interesting. I had a partner who said, we're worried about token thefts like always, and their RMM tool is not supported on our platform just yet. We're going to support it a little bit later this year. But he was like, as an interim stopgap measure, he's taken a whole list of IOCs that he thought were important and put into a respond rule. And the only thing it does is expire account logins. So if there is a token theft, and they detect it through, somebody logging in on a VPN, somebody coming in from overseas, somebody doing untoward behavior, triggers the respond rule, and the only thing it does is expire the account logins, do a token flush. Now, for the end user, they're working along, and the worst thing that happens to them is, oh, hang on, I have to log back in. But the bad guy now has to reset to zero. He's been flattened. He's got to start all over again. And I thought that was a very was doing anything similar outside of using their RMM management.
You cut off there for a second, Anthony.
Sorry about that. My internet and my head cold are having about the same day. Um, it's just going to be one of those days, man. It's just going to be one of those days, Andy. Any case, so the partner had built a very simple rule. Any IOC that he thought was a little sketchy, just expire account logins. That way, any end user
He's freezing up again.
token was killed. He was stopped in his tracks. And so that would make him have to start all over again. And I thought that was a very interesting implementation of that.
It
And I
is.
wanted to get the group's feedback. Yeah. It was just monkey simple. And it's one of those things that's like, why didn't I think of that? So keep sharing those ideas, guys. Keep sharing those ideas. As I said at the top, Ben's not here. I don't have a lot else to talk about. So I apologize, Steve. I think this is your first meeting, but it's usually a little more robust and interesting than this. Does anybody else have any wins of the week? You know, any places where you found small victories or large using the platform? Not a whole lot of talkers today.
Hey,
I
Anthony,
raised my
I've got
hand. Well, go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, Steve was lost. Who is that asking the question? Other than
sorry,
Andy?
it's Nadeem over at
Of
PCSN.
course.
So I've got a question. I saw there was a little presentation about session token theft and things like that. Is there a possibility that we can have um, somebody like that do a presentation in one of our actual seminars with prospects?
Um, Talk to your account manager, or in this case, because I think you're still in the onboarding process, reach out to me. We're always happy to jump in and have that conversation. But that video, I want you to steal that, share that, do as you will with that. I know, I mean, I'm 100% serious. If we've put it out there on the YouTube channel, if it's something that's shared in, I'm sorry, Connor or Maya, remind me, what is the name? Channel Pro? Is that where the rest of our marketing collateral? Thank you, Maya. Yeah, if it's shared on our Channel Pro link for the marketing purposes, that's exactly what that's there for. Not only to educate us all, but for you to educate your clients. Now, above and beyond that, if you've got a high touch client that you're prospecting with and they want to talk to that guys who manage the software that you're selling them, we're happy to jump on that call. You know, give me 20 minutes. Let me know what pain points we're trying to address, what we're trying to have them take away from the client or from the meeting. And we're happy to meet with that client to give them an understanding of the capabilities of the software, how you are going to implement it. We're never going to talk about price. Not going to talk about anything like that. We want to give you all the tools possible, even if that's one of us, monkey engineers, to show up and show them how the tool works kind of on the back end. So thank you for asking, Nadeem. Andy, I'm sorry I didn't see the hand. It was kind
It's
of
all
up
right.
in your plant there.
Yeah, no, I was at a training last week. It was called Azure Security Fundamentals or Mastery, excuse me. And we began to talk about how AI, it's really important if you're using Copilot to have proper permissions, proper labeling, and proper categorization of your data. And I said, why? Because they said the AI will go through everything that you have access to and summarize the data and use it for queries. So if you are at all familiar with ChatGPT, you can actually script a query to access data and pull up whatever that is. Well, what Copilot has done is it's opened up all of SharePoint, all of OneDrive, including anonymous links. And this means that OAuth token harvesting, and if you have Copilot and you don't have the proper labeling and security on your SharePoint and OneDrive, it could quite substantially extract all that information almost instantaneously.
Garbage in, garbage out. We've got to label it up front, and that's a lift. But once you're done,
The
then we can
point is
analyze it
that
cleanly.
token harvesting is much more impactful with the Copilot license added to an Office 365 than it is without.
So for clarification, a lot of MSPs put out the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license, right? Very, very common.
Yep.
Does that come with the Copilot
No, it's
Or
a
it doesn't
separate
matter?
add-on. It's $360 a year. And whatever that user has access to, Copilot has access to, including anonymous links. And how many times do we share information and we don't put an expiry date or tie it to an individual? This to me was really profound because how many of us have actually gone through and said, hey, let's make sure your permissions are all correct before adding a license? Because that's all Copilot is a license.
Can you
And
clarify on the anonymous links? Is that anonymous links that have been shared with the
yes,
user that has Copilot, not that that user has created? Because they had
no.
permissions to that anyway, right?
The way I'm trying to point out is anyone in the organization who shares a document anonymously means it can be accessed by Copilot from any user because it's anonymously shared. It bypasses all permissions. And if you don't have permissions set up, then it's a really bad news. And what if it's like an HR or accounting person that has Copilot and all of a sudden they're compromised with OAuth token? It means that they can ask the question of Copilot and it gives them all the information they need instantly.
Will SaaS alerts report on Copilot's access to these files?
It's not a SaaS alerts issue. The SaaS alerts issue is anonymous links. It is OAuth tokens. I'm trying to say from an MSSP or MSP perspective, if a customer has Copilot, there has to really be a due diligence to go through how they structure their information and use SaaS alerts to detect anonymous links and the age of OAuth tokens.
Let's kind of dive down that question that Steve asked is what
Good.
what can SaaS alerts detect on that? If our friend Bob in accounting, he's got access to a lot of anonymous links and a lot of other data. If Bob's account is compromised, what are the IOCs? What are we seeing that's non-standard behavior? Logging in from a different location, logging in via VPN, anything like that? Yes, SaaS alerts can capture that. But maybe there's the MSP isn't implementing, SaaS alerts quite that robustly. Now, let's imagine bad guys have Bob's credentials, they're logging in, and they start to do what with those credentials? They're going to access a bunch of anonymous links and start to download that data. SaaS alerts can monitor for big data downloads, big data exfills. So we would capture everything that Bob was doing, even though it was a bad guy with Bob's credentials. Now, again, there's a couple of points in this chain that we could have stopped that behavior. One, what was the indicator that this was not actually Bob, that it was a bad guy? A number of things we could have captured there. Then if they did get access, what were they actually doing? We can look for non-standard behavior for accounting, for Bob, for maybe that industry, build some rule templates around that. And I kind of want to reflect back. It's not just Bob at accounting. It's not just stuff that's linked to Copilot. Everything we saw happen to Microsoft last fall that we are still feeling the fallout from and still living in mortal fear if that source code is out there. How did the bad guys get in? It was a stale account that no one had used for years. I hope everybody knows that we can detect those stale accounts automatically or manually. So Microsoft, if they were using a tool like us or us, could have stopped that from ever happening. Or once those guys found that stale account, they were hammering in and brute forcing it, and it was an unmonitored account. Think about your scanner accounts or anything that doesn't have a real user. If there was a takeover, nobody's going to know the scanner account is being used for malicious purposes. In this case, it was an old unmonitored account that was being hammered at. So we would have been able to detect those brute force attacks on that. Now, once it was compromised, what did it start to do? It started looking around, it started poking around, it started downloading things. Again, all of those three things were things that, had it been SaaS alerts in place, we would have caught that, or we could have caught that. So from big to small, whether it's somebody has compromised an account and is using their admin privileges, like what happened with Microsoft, or in what Andy's proposed, whether someone has access to more robust tools like this Copilot. Look at the behaviors coming in, those leading indicators that tell us this is not normal behavior. this is not really that user. And then, try to identify those and act on them. So
Time of day is a great indicator of compromise. Most attacks occur outside of business hours, typically at 4 a.m.
and that's where it's like, what is normal? My firm, you guys know us, we support people from Israel all the way around the globe to South America, South Africa, South America, all across the Pacific Rim, all the way into the Far Eastern time zones, into Chennai and Perth. And now we're almost back to the Mid East. And I've got some people in Croatia as well. So we're in the Far East. So we cover almost every time zone. And our support team and Connor loves getting up at 2 a.m. to support our friends in Israel. So now all of a sudden, I've got my employees, my coworkers are working all kinds of non-standard hours. So I 100% agree with Andy that this is typically bad guys will identify the URL of Nero.com and they figure out where Nero's located, and then they're going to attack when Nero's asleep. But that is a good indicator. But this is such a 24-hour world that doesn't work for a lot of us. So again, we're looking at non-standard behavior, whether it's time, whether it's acting. Oh man, there's everybody waiting in the lobby. Time, activity, or what have you. So keep bringing those ideas up, Andy. I appreciate those.
Well, SaaS alerts report on API, the app registrations that are old and stale.
Or an account. No, we don't. I got to be honest with you, Steve. I don't. Integration, but if an end user, if an account uses their company credentials to connect to Adobe, Autotask, anything like that, we give you a high value alert that says, hey, this is the very first time Bob in accounting has connected to whatever the application is. Now, if Bob in accounting connected initially before you brought them on board, every time Bob OAuths in, that is captured as well. And if anybody on this call hasn't seen the new Shadow IT report, that's exactly what that's there for. So check out reports is about 10 or 12 down on the column, and it's made to tell you on a company-wide basis, what are you guys actually touching? Hey, people are using their company accounts to log into Apple. Okay. They're using their company accounts to log into, some Microsoft services. Okay. It's when they start using their company accounts to log into, services that we are not business friendly, or at the very least, you don't know what they are. Now you have no idea when the T&Cs were clicked by that end user. When was the last time anybody read some T&Cs? Let's be honest. They just accept it and they move forward. In any case, great exploration. Great exploration. Appreciate that. Steve, did that give you the answer you wanted? Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not going to say that just because we don't do it today, we won't be doing it next Tuesday, because we are looking at a lot of other areas. How deep can I get in there to detect existing API connections? Did somebody from your organization use Steve at to jump into Azure and stand up 15 new VMs and start running a whole bunch of Bitcoin mining operations? There's a lot of things we're looking at doing. We're just not quite there yet. Great discussions, guys. Again, for anybody that's joined us a little bit later, our friend Mr. Jones is not here. He's at a show. So do you have any questions at all today? Because I really don't have a heck of a lot to talk about.
Anthony, you have us every 2 weeks and now you want to cut us short? Come on.
No, not cut short. I've got one other thing, a little cherry on top for those who, couldn't come in at the top of the hour. Eric, the only thing you missed was, Enrique, the only thing you missed was I had one partner who shared an indicator of compromise, a respond rule, and the only action he took was to expire account logins. So if it was a token theft, worst case, end user has to sign in again, but the bad guy has to start all over again. from scratch. So I just thought that was a neat implication. And I don't know if anybody here is not on Discord. I would hope you would join us. We made a post there yesterday about some, and I think Ben had actually talked about it previously in a couple of other small spots. We had a partner who called us up and said, "Hey, can you look at? We're seeing this email backup software, this EM software. It's all being hit to us from a certain number of IPs. Can you look at that?" And so the support guys looked at it. They said, "Yes, this is exactly what you think it is. And okay, we can move forward." But our support team kind of took the next step. They looked at those IPs across the entire stack, and they identified another partner that was having that same issue in the same moment. Thank you, Maya. I appreciate that. That's the Discord link. Go there. There's some great content. And that particular client had no idea. They had just started using SaaS alerts. They were fairly new. And so our support team reached out to them and said, "Hey, we're seeing this kind of activity from these IPs. We've seen that elsewhere in our stack in the last, couple of hours. You might want to take a look at that." And they dove in, and
This is Ryan.
lo and behold, it was a persistent connection from before they had actually met SaaS alerts that was already in there. So I was very happy that our support team took a little initiative and tried to keep us all safe. And that's sort of what we'd like to do eventually is when,
I'm not interested in participating. Thank you, though.
hey, Ron, if you'd be so kind as to, I'm going to mute you. Sorry about that, Mr. Fairchild. I hope that you got the sales call ended very quickly and easily. But that's the kind of thing we really want to do, either programmatically or, like on Discord and here. If you guys see something that you haven't seen before, or maybe it's something that you don't think other people have seen before, absolutely share it with us.
Hey, Anthony, it's Roman.
Hey, buddy.
So how are you? So I posted something in Discord yesterday. I'm not sure whoever's not a member obviously didn't see it. The new MFA bypassing phishing kit, the Tycoon 360 is that they call it. I'm gonna post that in chat here.
Thank you.
So because of that, I actually created my not first, but third response rule with IOCs that they listed. Where is the chat here? So I have a quick question. Is it possible to, because they list the security firm that kind of conducted all the analysis of this guy, they list URLs as IOCs. Is it possible to add URLs to SaaS alerts instead of IP addresses? Because I have to convert to IP addresses and then I kind of added each one. So I get two wish lists, I guess, URLs and response rules. And maybe instead of adding the or statements one by one, maybe have some sort of a box where I can copy paste everything, followed by the commas on and say or and. That would make it easier because imagine there was like 100 of those things that I would have to add. Or maybe subnetting, if I put like a /16, whatever it is, but I don't want to do that because that would take out all the other not needed IP addresses, you know what I mean? But yeah, these so this I guess pay for play, I guess some sort of a phishing as a service kit is making rounds again, and they listed IOCs, so I added that to SaaS alerts. And also we do have DNS filter that we use across our clients. DNS filter already categorized, I would say 90% of those URLs as malicious, which is great. So I'm blocking it on two levels now. I'm blocking the URL as actual, on the DNS side, and I'm now monitoring for IPs as well. So not if, but when you guys integrate with DNS filter, that'll be great information for you guys to get. You'll get their threat analysis as well. Depending on the integration, they could feed it into your system, so you'll be kind of privy to that information. So that's, I guess, that was the kind of win of the week, I guess.
I appreciate that. Thank you. No, that's I know DNS filter. Because I know that's in the pipeline, but every upvote helps. And apologies if my internet's a little odd today. Yeah, every upvote helps. So if you are interested in seeing DNS filter on the platform and you're currently using it, let your account manager know. That's interesting, Roman. I don't know what Microsoft presents in the way of a URL. So I will add that as a wish list item on our board so that our engineers have visibility of that and give them a use case about what what you've described. So yeah, keep questions like that, keep requests like that coming. That absolutely helps get my guys some guidance.
Sorry, I'll ask that one, Anthony. What was it about integrating DNS filter?
Um, our goal is to monitor any application that presents CID, and that presents data that would be ingested and used as a part of your decision tree. And so DNS filter, I know I've heard this one before, since they aggregate data and let the clients, like our friend Roman, know, what's going on about perhaps some entries that might be of concern. We would love to harvest that and allow you to present that into something like Respond to allow you to automate those decisions. So if that makes sense, that's where I would like to go. So if anybody is using something like DNS filter, just reach out to your account manager and give them a thumbs up. Say, yeah, I'm using this. I'd love to be able to monitor that. Does that
Okay,
make sense, Enrique?
it does. Just came to mind right now. We use Zorus for DNS filtering, and they just came out with their isolate feature through the Zorus agent. You can isolate the machine. So it just triggered my mind. I wonder if they're doing API calls for that, where something's funny, SaaS alert could send a command to isolate the machine. I mean, I know that's way futuristic and a lot of different things.
Actually, you're not too far out, Enrique. I've had partners actually put Roost in the middle of that, where it's aggregating data, waiting for those criteria to be met, and then sending commands into other applications, perhaps like your Zora thing, to execute a command. So there's a couple of ways to get there that may be a little outside of our ecosystem. But again, you've got all this beautiful data being presented to you. How do you kind of put it all together? We've tried to simplify everything that we're presenting to you to give you a unified platform on what we have access to. But we're going to kind of stay in our lane. I'm not going to say we're going to be like Roost, but I know I've got some partners, and I wish I had a good example for you, but I know I've got some partners that have started to leverage their Roost integrations quite heavily.
Right, but
Those
for the
no-
same,
Sorry.
sorry, I gotta jump off in 3 minutes. Actually, I have a call. So just one last thing on that, Anthony, and sorry, Enrique, I cut you off. By the same token, if you integrate with Microsoft already, and I know I brought that up before, why not integrate with Microsoft Defender that can already isolate? Right, I'm thinking that might be easier than having a kind of something in the middle,
Well, that's
like
absolutely fair,
Roost.
Roman.
Right?
We're going down the path to see what we can get out of Defender and what can we push back, because one doesn't always mean the other is possible.
Right.
But Roman, thanks for dropping in when you could, man. We'll talk to you again.
Will do. All right. Thanks.
Andy, what my patient friend, what's going on, man?
Well, coming back to this Copilot piece, one, on the wish list, could you please add, can we detect if Copilot licensing is present for a particular user? And two, if Copilot is present, is there a way to determine or that its use is occurring outside of, if we're able to detect usage, if we can't detect usage, then it would be, what does that user potentially have access to that's sensitive? So that we could better engage and know where weaknesses are, because we're going to make mistakes if we try to do this top-down planning, and having a way to detect issues around sensitive data being exposed unintentionally, especially to a Copilot, would be very helpful.
It's the way your analytical mind works, you're not going to miss much. Just the way I've seen you look at all the different angles. But let's kind of take a small step back. Yes, we've looked at licensing for a long time and best how to present it. And you're starting to see some of the results of that in the Fortify module and how we're accessing that sort of stuff and presenting it to you. So to let you know what you can and cannot do in that instance. But also, we've had a fairly solid request from the minute the account management tool came out to let us know what was the licensing level and it's an easily visible option there. So you don't block sign into something that's still carrying around licensing, because Microsoft, of course, is happy to have you turn somebody into a shared mailbox and have them still have Microsoft BI and project. Microsoft doesn't care. Um, so that's something that is absolutely in the pipe to identify what licensing is presented, including our friends there at Copilot. Also, going down the secondary part of your question was, it's often been asked, hey, if I onboard a client and I see Bob the accountant, what does he have access to? Which SharePoint shares? What has he been granted privileges to? And that one's actually a little bit harder to pull out, but our guys are working on that as well. Again, I'm not going to promise any delivery dates, but those sort of going hand in hand would give you a better understanding of the abilities of an account and how large of a threat vector they might be. So we're looking at all that. So I'll add that to the existing notes, the existing requests on that, Andy. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Anthony.
Of course. Well, I've managed to
Questions?
tap dance. Yes, please.
So I might be the newest one on this call today.
Close.
So I'm going to try a newbie question. And this is for everybody. Sorry, Anthony, not just for you.
No, bring it. Yeah.
So SaaS alerts is not necessarily something that's in our face all day long. We have the PSA integration. I'm curious how partners are bringing critical, important alerts to the forefront of their face when it happens. If, in the balance of how much do we want to rely upon and respond, or how much we want to see first, what kind of impact that's going to have, and do more of a manual, or maybe a mix of both. But I'm really right now trying to build a system, a process. Okay, there's something to know about. I want it in front of my face, and that's not in the queue that my help desk usually looks at. I'm curious what everyone does.
Well, why, Steve, is it not in the queue that your help desk normally looks at would be the first question.
Noisy.
Because once you hone in on the noise, this is a refinement process. By the way, SaaS alerts is not static. It is evolving on a quarterly basis on a substantial level. And that means workflows have to be adjusted for that. And the real issue is, if you believe that OAuth token harvesting is a critical path, or email compromise is a critical path, what tool other than SaaS alerts is there to catch it?
Nothing.
Okay, then. So do you need to be watching for OAuth token harvesting, or maybe cause an interruption, or maybe send up a red flag? My Teams integration would be nice, Anthony. How about that? We'll add that to the list.
So I'll add on there just quickly. We had that same question, Stephen. There's no such thing as a newbie question. We all learn every single second.
Yeah.
So we have that same issue. We have a very noisy environment to date. So a year later, we're still working on that. But what we did was create a text alert to my T-Mobile via the T-Mobile email address I have on my phone. So anything that's critical, I'll get a text email besides the queue and everything else. So it's right on my face here, dingy, 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 when there's anything critical. Some are not critical, but they're critical. So they're here. So that could be an option, set up the critical alerts to also send you a text message via your email for your whatever mobile carrier you're using for your number.
Okay. Thanks.
Feedback.
It takes work. Is the only way to describe it, Steve. It takes continual work.
So hi, Brian here from DBC Tech. This is the first time on one of these calls, so hello everybody. I have more of a question about it we've had the past couple of weeks. We use a respond rule for brute force successful attacks to expire logins and block sign in. And I believe 2 or 3 times in the past 3 weeks, there were some random issues where various customers were just randomly getting locked out due to what was being alerted as brute force successful attacks. And after we had opened up tickets, there were, the response was there were, the exact words were intended deviation from standard deployment protocols resulted in unintended activation of non-interactive Microsoft endpoint with our production environment. And it's happened a couple times now, and it's not. I mean, it was a pretty big deal for us because we had dozens of customers calling in saying, "Why am I getting locked out of my account?" And we were reporting back, there were, what was happening. And then when we realized it was actually a malfunction in our tool, it was kind of embarrassing to go back then and explain what had happened. I was just curious if you knew about this or can elaborate further on what was going on.
Brian, your timing is excellent. We had not seen this for years. As past as prologue, we monitor literally thousands of endpoints in the API. So we're constantly pulling data from all the different applications. And Microsoft is not terrible about giving us data at the APIs. What they are terrible about is one day all the data will be coming from endpoint 15, and the next day it's all coming from endpoint 300. So I've got to basically monitor for heartbeat on all these different endpoints, and we look for volume changes coming from any one endpoint. And if what you're talking about happened around, I think, the 8th of this month, about 3 weeks back now, that one I can speak to pretty clearly. That was
that was the first one.
Yep. Yeah.
And then
that
this
one,
past Friday was the most recent one.
Yeah, this past Friday was a separate issue. So let me speak to each one
Sure.
Real quickly here. What happened the first week of the month? There was a certain endpoint we see failures. I don't know, maybe 90, maybe 100,000 times an hour. This is just normal behavior. No, it's about 100,000 times a day is what my guys were telling me. So pretty literally consistent as our user base has grown. We haven't seen any problems with that. That particular endpoint went to be about 28 million an hour all of a sudden. And as a firm, we first had to sanitize the data. Is this Microsoft handing us accurate information? As we can only go on what they hand us. And once we determined that, yes, Microsoft was telling us 28 million times a minute, we had to compare that. Okay, is there anything in our processes that was duplicating that or multiplying that? Okay, there wasn't. Now that I've trusted but verified, I checked what Microsoft was telling me. I made sure that our processes were doing exactly what they had always done. I'm only passing along to you what Microsoft is telling us. And then we started to look at, okay, now I can make a statement on this. And that took about 2 hours. That time, an hour and a half or something before we went public with that. And if Brian, if you and your team weren't looped on that, reach out to your account manager, join us on Discord. We try to put this in a couple of places because we sent out a mass email on that to let people know what had happened and why. And it was funny. Some of the guys and I were actually at a show at the time. I'm standing there at the booth trying to explain the platform, and I literally had partners running up to me with their laptops saying, "Hey, are you seeing this?" And so we found out what it was. We found out exactly where the source was, and we let our partners know as soon as we could. The next day, actually, far later that night, the press started saying, "Oh, it looks like even though they won't say who's telling us this, sources inside of Microsoft are saying, oh, those Cozy Bear guys." Some of the source code they got was some of the things they took last fall were the source code, and they started to see some very strange, exceedingly high volume attacks from what looked like almost internal, again, source code level. So that was I'm not 100% sure it's a nation state, and I wouldn't venture to guess at that, but that's kind of what the press was thinking it was. So now the hard part. Microsoft is telling us something horrible and terrible is happening 28 million times a second, or whatever the number was, and that triggers your automation, and that's a challenge. We absolutely, there was, Brian, I would encourage you to go back to our YouTube channel, and I think it was 2 weeks ago, Thursday, our CTO had some great things to say in our weekly SASE meeting, our weekly security meeting, about his perspective on all of that. And Chip Buck, if you haven't met Chip yet. And it was an interesting discussion, and there were absolutely partners like yourself that had automation in place that got nailed on this. And I don't want to say it's a false flag because I'm kind of handcuffed by what Microsoft tells me. So had this been an actual breach in progress, an actual attack in progress that was getting any kind of success, I really would have wanted to know about that. So this is one of those horrible things where we've erred on the side of security and a little less on the side of usability. Now, the takeaway from that is we're in the process of reevaluating how we monitor all those millions of endpoints or thousands of endpoints. And you guys may not be aware of this. It's in the notes or the knowledge base article, but imagine you have a respond rule set to do something. If it starts to run away and affect a horrendous amount of people all at once, there's actually a circuit breaker that sends you a critical alert to let you know this has been turned off because it looks like it's going bananas. We're looking at doing something similar with the input we're getting from Microsoft. If we see something that is wildly out of range, then we need to make some adjustments, or at least inform our clients, our partners like you, that this is something that is not us. It is, and I don't want to throw Microsoft in the bus, because we're definitely going to take accountability for anything that we can do and change. But sometimes, again, if this is something that we're being told and we have sanitized the inputs, and that is actually what's happening, then we can only go on the evidence that we're presented with. So for what happened on the 8th, does all that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Thank
And
you,
I'll definitely
Brian.
go back and look at that in that previous video.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't find it right away, reach out to your account manager, because that was a good one. Chip is the most paranoid security guy I've ever met. I love him dearly. Worked with him for about a decade now, and he's fantastic. But man, that guy is amped up when it comes to security, and it's kind of fun to watch him try to be polite about what he thinks, nation state actors are doing and the like. Great guy though. He's a fantastic guy. That was our founder and CTO. I don't have a lot of in-depth knowledge on what happened just the other day, so I'm going to have to kind of lean on what the support guys told you. If you need more detail on that, Brian, happy to take that offline, or join us on Thursday at 1 Eastern for our SASE call, our weekly security meeting, and bubble that up. It's exactly the space where we want to hear about that. We want to hear about what is going right on the platform and maybe what's not, because we don't get better by assuming that security is stagnant. It changes. So we appreciate that input.
Okay, yeah, I can try and make it on Thursday.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Great discussion, and I love being able to talk for 20 minutes straight. It's kind of what I do for a living. Guys, Enrique, I hope you feel that we've given you a little more than the first 15 minutes before pulling the plug. Un poquito, yeah.
17 minutes.
We do have 17 minutes. So does anybody have any 16.5-minute questions?
Trying to remember, I had something, but I keep forgetting.
Yeah, not a problem.
Are
Well,
the sorry,
yes.
Anthony, I know it's not your area, but maybe on the SaaS Alerts mobile app, I know the push notifications are turned on now. I know there was something pending on the back end so that we could get the alerts.
Yeah, I apologize, Enrique. We'd have to reach out to Adam. I don't know about that one.
Okay.
I'm going to say Ben probably knows the answer, and he's not here. So
Yeah.
we're just going to blame Ben for everything. I had an old firm where on Mondays everything was my fault. On Tuesdays it was one by other engineers. On
Yeah.
Wednesdays it was like it's just where everybody's got a turn barrel. Guys, any other questions? Anything else that we can dive into today that you'd find value in discussing? I'm going to let you have 15 or 16 minutes back. Thank you all for joining. I hope you found this time valuable. Look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks. And as always, do join us on Discord or on our weekly security SASE meetings. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you. Likewise.
Bye.